Hello everyone and welcome to Season of Waaagh. Today we are back for another short Age of Sigmar video. My name is Fabian and tonight we're gonna talk about the new Orruk Warclan's Battletome. Without further ado, let's get started. As per the previous Battletomes, there is still not too much that's changed compared to the index. In this one, the biggest focus, as we will see later, is the new Armies of Renown, and especially the return of the big Waaagh. There are still a few updates on some of the battle traits and units, and there is also a new manifestation lore with 3 manifestations, new piece of terrain for both Ironjawz and Kruleboyz, and a new unit for the Kruleboyz. First, on the battle traits, unfortunately for the Kruleboyz players, the teleport has been changed to being now your hero phase instead of any movement phase. That's a big change as well as a big nerf. I hope that they will go back, but we don't know what the intent is, and for now it's clearly just a nerf. Being the hero phase adds some options, but being limited to your hero phase really reduces the potential of counterplay, and it also means that you can't both teleport a unit and use your poison. For the spell laws, there are 2 changes, one for Ironjawz, one for Kruleboyz. For Ironjawz, the range of the teleport has been increased to Holy Within 12 instead of Holy Within 9. For Kruleboyz, the -1 attack spell has been changed to Within 12 instead of Holy Within 18. On to the updated units, and first with Ironjawz. There is a decent change on the Mega Boss on Murkvast. The old Rampage and the 2d6-inch pile-in have been kind of combined in a new Rampage. That changes things slightly. The 2d6 pile-in was automatic, now it's behind a 3-up, but the ability in itself is more powerful because it allows you to move at the beginning of the combat phase. You don't have to finish the move in combat, so you can use it to reposition yourself, and then later in the combat phase, pile in if you charged, and get into more units, maybe that were out of range, or just to have a better sequence of fight activation. So very powerful, and any movement trick is anyway good. Then onto the Mega Boss on foot. He had 2 abilities that increase the attacks for other units, but they were all behind a dice roll. Now one of them, the hero phase one, has been removed, and the one in the combat phase has been changed to be a chain activation that automatically gives the +1 attack. For the Outboys, their shield bash has been changed to work on any unit, not just unit that charged that turn, so it's going to be a bit more flexible to do the mortal wounds at the start of combat. And finally, for the Gorgruntas, they have +1 attack on their riders, but the mounts went to hitting on 5s. For Kruleboyz, only 2 changes. The first one is pretty impactful, it's on the Snatcher boss on Sludge Wrecker Beast, and they changed the way his venom works. Used to give +1 damage, that's fully done. Now it just gives keyword to a unit, and then at the end of any turn you check if either the monster or the unit with the keyword did damage to a unit, and it's gonna do an additional D3 mortals and give them -1 to wound for the next turn. Has to be done with combat attacks, doesn't work on the ball boys unfortunately, so definitely a nerf, but if this comes with a good points reduction as well, this might still be a viable option, just plays differently. Then we have the only new unit of this release with the Zoggrok Slitter boss. There isn't too much, it's not really good. Like, it's not a good war scroll, but it's gonna be probably quite cheap, and maybe a potential sub-commander to use the new Honor Guard. Now onto the more exciting and powerful novelties. There are the 2 pieces of terrain. So they are very similar, they have the same health, the same save, the same abilities to enter and leave, so not gonna go over all of that. Just the difference between the 2 is their main ability. For Ironjawz, in your hero phase, you can pick an enemy unit within 18, you roll dice, and on a 4-up or a 3, if it's garrisoned by an infantry hero, it's gonna do one of 3 effects. Either -3 or C, reduce the casting, or the most powerful one that we're gonna see probably a lot, -1 dice to charge. So very powerful, needs to position correctly, as we've seen. Faction terrains can be used against you if you're not careful, but being able to reduce the number of dice to charge 18 inches away is going to be a powerful tool against most of the melee armies in the game. For Kruleboyz, again same package, but its special ability is that in your hero phase, you can pick a unit Holy Within 12, friendly or enemy, or Holy Within 18 if there is someone garrison, and it's going to add +1 for your Dirty Jigs roll that targets that same unit. So a way to guarantee your teleport, it's not going to fail on a 1, even if you roll a 1 with the +1 goes off. Just a very solid ability that's gonna help Kruleboyz be a bit more reliable. And then we have the new manifestation lore. They are the same for both Ironjawz and Kruleboyz, and then we're gonna start with first, probably the best one, the Foot of Gork. It's pretty solid with 8 health and a 4-up save. The summon foot, you can summon it wholly within 12, both parts, and they have to stay within 9 of each other. And then in your movement phase, which means that it's not going to work as well with your counterspell, but in your movement phase, you can take one of the 2 parts and reset it wholly within 9 of the other part, basically increasing its range from wholly within 12 to wholly within 21. And then for every unit within 3, on a 2-up, they're going to take D3 mortals, and they will have the Stormed keyword, which means that they're going to be -1 dice to charge. Because it's a setup and not a move, you are allowed to reposition one of the 2 feet the turn where you summoned it. That gives you an effective threat range of 24 inches to either do mortals, if that's what you need, or just put the -1 dice to charge. That can be extremely powerful. Next, we have another static manifestation with the Murkvast Menagerie. This one is summoned wholly within 18, and again, because it's static, it doesn't have to be outside 9 of the enemy, so you can put it directly in combat with them. And the strength for this one is that it has a range of 6 inches for its 2 passive abilities, and it's gonna reduce the OC by 3 of units within 6. But most importantly, they can't use run ability. That includes redeploy, so that means that you can use it to set it up within 6 of a unit that you want to go into, and they will not be able to redeploy away. So this one is going to be a bit more situational, but can still be very powerful if used correctly. And finally, we have the Gork Aurora. It's more a support piece for your own wizards and priests. Effectively, it's going to give +1 or 2 to cast or chant, and then you're gonna roll an above dice equal to that, and depending on what you get, either you're gonna hurt yourself or you're gonna actually get an aura of +1 to charge for all your friends around. The mortals and bonus to charge is cute, but what you use it for is for the bonus, and especially on a prayer, getting +2 can be huge. So overall, a very good manifestation lore for the Orruks. It's free, like the terrain, doesn't cost you anything. In the case of the manifestation, it's instead of a generic one, but probably worth it. And for the terrain, it's just a free buff, as long as you use it correctly and you don't let your opponent take advantage of it. And that's it for the main Battletome, for the main Ironjawz and Orruk armies. But now we can jump onto the most juicy part of this review with the Armies of Renown, and more specifically the Big Waaagh. So Big Waaagh is back in a very different form than it used to be. It has a unique limitation in terms of army building. So you can include any Ironjawz or any Kruleboyz units, but for each regiment led by an Ironjawz hero, you also need to have one led by a Kruleboyz hero. Basically, it's going to limit your list building. You can't just go like 3 Ironjawz heroes and 1 Kruleboyz. Another thing is like you can't include a Regiment of Renown or any of the faction terrain, which is a bit sad considering they are new. It would be nice, especially to have the choice between the 2, but that's what it is. So again, it's very different than it used to be. You don't have the points that you stack anymore. It's just a completely different army now. It has 4 battle traits. First one is in the deployment phase. You can give an additional heroic trait for a Kruleboyz hero and one for an Ironjawz hero. Note that the rule that you can't use the same heroic trait multiple times still applies. So you can't just stack 3 times of the best one. You're gonna have to have basically 3 different ones. 1 in your list building and 2 that you pick during the deployment phase. Then in your hero phase, you will be able to pick an Ironjawz unit and a Kruleboyz unit to be possessed by the Waaagh. Note that it's for the rest of the battle round, and that's something that we'll see as well in the heroic traits. It's not until the start of your next turn. And I guess the next point is a passive. Like, what does being possessed by the power of the Waaagh mean? Well, for Ironjawz units, it means that you have +1 to run and charge. And for Kruleboyz units, it means that you have crits on 5s. That includes shooting. And finally, movement phase ability. In your movement phase, you can bring back a unit that has strengths. Just has to be wholly within 12 of your general, so your general still has to be alive, but doesn't cost any CP, there's no dice roll. It's just bring back a unit that started with 3 or more models at half strengths, wholly within 12 of your general and outside of 9. So free recursion, and that's gonna be very defining on how the army plays. You will want to recycle your units and be an endless green wave of orcs just crashing into your opponent. So heroic traits. As discussed, you're gonna have 1 in your list building and you will be able to take 2 additional ones. So unlike other Armies of Renown, the Big Waaagh has access to 4 of them. The first one, taking names, makes it that if you kill a hero, you're gonna be possessed by the Waaagh for the rest of the game. And then there are 3 different ones that you activate in your hero phase. And last, for the duration of the battle round. The 3 of them are once per battle. You need to be possessed by the Waaagh to use them, so you're gonna have to pick the hero that has it as part of the battle trait to be possessed by the Waaagh, so you can use this once per battle heroic trait. And then the 3 of them are very similar. There are 12-inch auras that last again for the rest of the battle round. The first one is 5 upward, second one is +1 to wound, and the last one is crit 2 hits. What we see here is that 2 of the 3, the crit 2 hits and the +1 to wound, are going to be more beneficial to Ironjawz units. Kruleboyz units having crit mortals means that they don't really care about the bonus to wound, and the crit 2 hits doesn't do anything. The 5 upward though is going to benefit everyone. So most likely you're going to have one of each of the once per turn, effectively once per battle, because you can't take them multiple times, and you will just have to use them at the right time. The artifact of power is just bouncing back mortals on 6s to save, and then you have 1 spell and 1 prayer. The prayer gives the very powerful effect of fight twice, but the second activation of strike last, and its enhanced effect can target 2 units. The thing is, you can only target units that are already in combat. The limitation of having to be in combat makes it a solid prayer, but very situational. Probably not gonna bring more than 1 priest ever with Big Waaagh, if any. For the spell, it's a buff that you put on the unit who live in 12 that lasts until the start of your next turn. And if you target an Ironjawz unit, it has a buff to the OC as long as it's in range of a Kruleboyz unit. And the other way around, if you target a Kruleboyz unit, it gets +2 move as long as it's next to an Ironjawz unit. And finally, for the manifestation lore, like the other armies of renown, it has only 1, but it's probably the best one. It has access to the foot of Zoggrok, so you're gonna have to see, depending on how many wizards you bring, do you want just the foot of Zoggrok, or do you want a full generic manifestation lore? So that's it for the Big Waaagh. Again, plays very differently than what it used to be. No more points to stack and getting better and better. Instead, a lot of recursion as long as you can keep your general alive. A lot of options to pick from though, still with any Ironjawz or any Kruleboyz, with just some limitation in list building. It will be very interesting to see what players come up with. It sounds like you would like to be mostly Ironjawz with just a few Kruleboyz for maybe some shooting and for the list building, considering that some of the buffs just do not benefit the Kruleboyz at all. But being able to bring back a lot of Art Boys or Brutes or even Bolt Boys sounds like it's not gonna be bad. Very excited to see what players come up with, what mix of Kruleboyz and Ironjawz they bring to the table. But yeah, Big Waaagh is back, just not the Warclan Prophet. For the second of the army of renown, we have Zoggrok's Ironmongerz, and basically with this army you can include all the infantry units for Ironjawz, heroes and non-heroes infantry, as well as your faction terrain, but no Regiment of Renown. In this army of renown, Zoggrok has a for a bodyguard if he's next to another unit. Also, the entire army has anti-faction terrain +1 rand as well as anti-war machine +1 rand. And Art Boys with 3 or more models have a 5 upward as long as they are next to another unit of Art Boys with 3 or more models. So extremely tanky Art Boys in this army of renown. And lastly, at the end of any turn, you can ping one of your units that is more than 9 inches away from any enemy unit and had damage allocated this turn, and they can move. It's a D6 inch move, so it's a bit random and they cannot end up in combat, but it's gonna help you to get some movement with your slow orcs if you get shot at, for instance, or just help you reposition if you went into a unit, killed it, now you are in the open more than 9 away, you can just get a free D6 inch move. So this army would be all about just tanky head boys, slowly walking up the field. If the opponent shoots at you, you're gonna be a bit faster, and Zoggrok himself is going to distribute crit mortal and be probably really hard to kill with the 4 bodyguard. If you love Art Boys, that's the army for you. For the heroic traits, it's just extra 3 dice to rally for Art Boys and units with the Brute keyword. Who live in 12, so that includes Brutes, but also like Ragers. And the artifact of power, if the holder does any damage to a unit, it's gonna have -1 to save and ignore positive modifiers to save until the start of your next turn. So very powerful, especially if you can have it, for instance, on a mega boss. You don't need damage, applies the debuff, and then chain activate a unit of brutes with +1 attack. They will just destroy the unit with the debuff. Onto the spell lore, an unneeded spell, very good, just +1 dice to charge. Might be worth it to even have multiple wizards to be able to give it to multiple units. That's a very powerful spell, very straightforward. The prayer, which is also unlimited, is very interesting. You're gonna put it on a piece of terrain for the rest of the battle, either who live in 12 or who live in 18 with the enhanced effect. And so for the rest of the battle, every time an enemy unit starts or finishes a move within 6, on a 2 up it's gonna take D3 mortals. It can stack a lot because that even includes piling moves, it's any type of move. If you can put that on a piece of terrain that's well position and that might touch most of your opponent's army, it will do a lot of mortal. So definitely not a prayer to underestimate. However, that's the only prayer you have access to if you bring a priest. So you're gonna have to make sure that you get full use of it if you don't want to have just a useless priest. And for the manifestation lore, like the other armies of renown, just has one. This one is Gork Rora. You're gonna have to see if it's worth it or if you want to have a generic lore. And last, for the armies of renown, because this book has 3 of them, we have a Kruleboyz focused one and one that loves monsters, with the Murkvast Menagerie. This one also has interesting list building requirements, so you need to include Scumdrake as your general. And you can include any of the Kruleboyz hero monsters, so like the Vulture, the Sludge Wrecker Beast, or the Troggoth. And for every hero monster that you include, you can also include 1 Shaman and 1 infantry unit. And you can also bring Sloggoth with this army, but you can't bring Faction Terrain or Regiment of Renown. For the battle traits, first one is a Rampage that allows you to do mortals just based on your health characteristic. You just roll a number of dice equal that, and on a 6-up it's going to do a mortal. There's a passive, basically the entire army will get -1 a hit against them as long as they are whole within 12 of a monster that did not charge that turn. And finally there is a mini Murderlust. You can only use it in your movement phase, but it allows you to move 3 inches. But you must end that move in combat. That allows you to potentially auto-run and move in combat, or retreat and move in combat. It's not as flexible as Murderlust, especially because you can only use it in your movement phase and you have to finish in combat, but still a very powerful tool. Anything that can block redeploys, that allows you to still get in combat after retreating, is very good to have. For the heroic trait, it's very simple, 5-up ward, gonna be very good on big monsters. For the Artifacts of Power, it just allows you to pick 1 objective within 6 inches, and for the rest of the battle, it's going to be infested with bugs, meaning that it's going to reduce the OC of enemy units, and they will be ignoring positive modifiers as well. And finally, for the spell lore, you have an unlimited spell that targets friendly infantry and gives them a 5-up ward. For the manifestation lore, same as Big Waaagh, it's the Foot of Gork. On to the Regiment of Renown, and there are 2 in this book. The first one is Da Hurtling Hogs, and it includes 2 big pigs, one being the Tusk Boss, the other one being the Gouger. You can put it in all the destruction armies except Ironjawz. And it has 2 abilities. The first one is a Rampage that allows you to move d6 inches in the combat phase, but you have to finish that move in combat, and you can only use it if you charge. It's also gonna get you an additional momentum point. And finally, there is a Waaagh for this little regiment. Once per battle, it's gonna make it that every time you finish a charge with your guys, you're just gonna do a lot of mortals to all the units around. And the damage will be increased against infantry. And finally, for this video, probably the least exciting is the Accounting Crew. Again, Scumdrake is here, so it sounds like they really want to sell that model, but this time it's accompanied by 2 units of Hobgrots. There are 2 abilities. One of them gives the Hobgrots run and shoot, and the other one allows Scumdrake in the enemy hero phase to potentially eat a model. We'll have to see how many points this one is. It doesn't sound amazing on paper, but if it's cheap enough, might be fun. Scumdrake has fun rules, the Hobgrots are cheap, there are 2 screens, so we'll have to see with the points. But that's the less flashy on the paper, although it doesn't mean that it's gonna be the worst. And that's it for today with the Orruk Warclan's Battletome. Quite a few novelties, with the new manifestation lore and the faction terrains, and the 3 armies of renown. Some will be disappointed by the changes to Kruleboyz. We'll have to see if they maintain them or decide to go backwards, depending on how Kruleboyz end up. For Ironjawz, small changes on some of the key units, plus the new manifestation and terrain make the army quite interesting, and obviously a lot of the players will just be excited to be able to play Big Waaagh again. The next Battletome will have a lot more new things with the Gits and all the new Git mob, so stay tuned and we'll see you there.